How's it going today, church? My name is Nick Hankins. I'm the creative director here. One of the favorite things of mine is just coming into and just worship our wonderful Father and just being able to grasp what that means together as a church. I want to tell a story very quickly. There's a few times me and my wife have been on a cruise, and there was one night that we were getting ready to go eat. I love to eat. I think that is one of the better things that you could do as a person is just to eat. So cruise is my thing. I'll be able to go eat and just eat whatever. Tonight's one of those nights that you dress up. So we were getting ready, and we noticed that the boat's kind of rocking back and forth, and you don't really think much about it. So we go eat, we sit down, and next thing we know, the water in our cups are kind of going back and forth. And it's just like, what is going on? You can't see outside because it's dark. You're in the middle of the ocean. There's just not a lot going on. So we get done eating, like I'm sure I ate some kind of seafood, some kind of meat, and it was just good. And we go up to the top, we're like, let's see what is going on. So we get up there. You could barely walk 2 steps without falling back like 12. So when you walk forward, you walk backward because the wind is knocking you back and forth because of the storm that is just coming, and you can see the lightning probably about 5 feet. Not 5 feet, let's say 50 feet. That makes more sense. It's coming towards us, and we're going right in the middle of that, right? So, all these people are walking around, and it's just kind of like, how do you walk when the wind and the rain is just smacking you in your face? So, that is kind of, when I was reading Jonah 2, that's where we'll be at today, is just kind of telling Jonah's story through that. I think that if we're being transparent, that is our relationship with the Lord sometimes. It's like we feel like we're walking forward, and then we get smacked with something, we go backwards. So if we were being really honest with each other, we can say that our relationship with the Lord can have some rough waters in that. Today's passage is a situation in Jonah's life. That situation, we'll get right into it. Jonah was given a command, and he doesn't follow it. God starts working into this situation when Jonah really didn't know what was going on. In that situation, Jonah walked away. He walked away from God's presence. How do you get back into God's presence? It's easy. It's just you say his name, and that sounds crazy, and that sounds like, well, how do you do that? Like, how do you just say his name and get right back into his presence? Well, let's read Jonah 2 together, and we'll kind of break this down. Verse 1, then Jonah prayed to the Lord, his God, from the belly of the fish, saying, I cried out to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me out of the belly of Sheol. I cried, you heard my voice, for you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas that flooded around me. All the waves and all your billows passed over me. Then I said, I am driven away from your sight, yet I shall look again upon your holy temple. Verse 5, the waters closed in over me to take my life. The deep surrounded me. The weeds were wrapped around my head at the roots of the mountains. I went down to the land where those bars closed upon me forever. Yet you brought me up to my life from the pit, O Lord my God. When my life was fading away, I remembered the Lord and said, my prayer came to you into your holy temple. Those who regard to the vile idols forsake not their hope of steadfast love. But with the voice of thanksgiving, I will sacrifice to you what I have vowed I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Verse 10, and the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited Jonah upon dry land. That is, I want to go right into verse 4, and let's just start right there. Let me read it again. Then I said, I was driven away from your sight, yet I shall look again upon your holy temple. At the end, upon your holy temple. What does that mean? When you look at that, why was that such a big point in verse 4? The holy temple is where God was in the Old Testament. So they had to go worship, they had to go pray, they had to go give sacrifices through that. So the difference in that in the Old Testament and what it is today, we have the Holy Spirit. So we can do all of that. We can pray, we can worship anywhere. We don't have to come to a building or come to the altar to pray, to make that decision to pray, we can do that anywhere. Um, you know, in verse 4, he said, I'm driven away from your sight, yet I shall look again. Jonah was in a lot of pain in this moment. Just think about the surroundings. In chapter 1 that Pastor Matt taught about last week, it was, he had a command and he had a way that God told him to do something, and Jonah went the other way, right? So in this moment, he's already walked away from what God's called him to do. So, Jonah was in a lot of pain. He doesn't understand, and he's trying to think about how his whole life is just shutting down around him. When I think about this pain and the problem that he was going through, I think about my life. I think about 7 years ago, last Monday, I lost my dad. He was 53 years old. And through that pain, there was decisions that I made. I walked away from God's presence. I walked away from what was necessary and what I thought I grew up on. From telling my younger brothers and sisters that, hey, Dad passed away, so my mom didn't have to do that. From the just pure hatefulness of my life, from the every night of just drinking and just really not understanding why that this pain has taken away, has just dropped on me. 7 months before my dad died, I got married to Ashley. And so we were trying to figure that out. And so now I'm married. I lost my best friend. He was the best man at my wedding. And now I don't know what. My whole world is just upside down. And so during this time, in my life, that I was just really rocking back and forth. I would say a prayer, but guess what? It was hateful. It was so just like, well, why would you do this to me? Why would you do this to, a guy that grew up worshiping you and going to church, and I went to a Christian school. So I was throwing all of these things out, making me sound good, right? So that pain turned me away from the church and made me somebody that I was just not happy with. I worked at Channel 8 for about 2.5 years. Then I was at Channel 6 too. But I quickly started hanging out with the people I knew I shouldn't be associating with. Every night was a party. Every night I was, hey, what are we doing tonight? I'm a very relational guy, so I gotta be careful like who I surround myself with, and I know that about myself. But every night was something else. Every night was just like, hey, how late can I stay up? What can I drink to make my pain go away? I just remember this process, and I'm newly married. Ashley worked overnight, so I only saw her for about 30 minutes in the mornings. So through all this pain and through all this problem of my life, just not understanding, I'll just look at Jonah and think, that is me. That is me because I understand the pain because I was away from God's presence, right? So, I remember just going to church one Sunday. By the way, that night I went out, partied all night, went to church the next day, not feeling the best, but I went, right? And I remember saying, God, I have to be back in your presence. And that's the moment that changed my life. That's the moment that I can stand here and say, I'm past that. But let's get back into Jonah's life. Let's get back to where, in verse 4, he's very just like, I don't know what's going on. This is the beginning of his understanding that he walked away, and how do I get back to it? Verse 7, let's jump down. I'll read it to you again. When my life was fading away, I remember the Lord, and my prayer came to you into your holy temple. There's a few things I want to get to just kind of talk about. As Jonah remembers the goodness of God's presence, he immediately is closer to God. Let me say that one more time. Jonah started remembering how good God was and how wonderful his presence was and how he had it together, and now his life is just destroyed altogether. Remembering who God is in a problem immediately makes him bigger than what the problem in your life is. Whatever situation it is, God is always bigger once you remember him and who he is. Um, this is a kind of funny story. I was talking to Pastor Matt about this. I was like, hey, what? Illustrations, like like how do you come up with them? And he gave me one on this. Remember, your problem seems so big, right? But God is always bigger. So when you think of your thumb, you think of just, you always, it's there, you always want it, it's something that you use every day. It's something that it sees pretty big, right? So that is your that is your problem. That is your pain that you're going through. But when you see the sun, what do you think of? You think of something that's bright, that is something that is just very big and just beautiful. And that is God. So when you focus on your thumb and you hold it up to the sun and you look at it and you focus on it, and guess what happens? You lose track. You can't see the sun. You can't see God. So your problem and then God. So if you focus around it, it's always, you won't be able to see it. But if you remove your thumb, what happens? God is bigger than the problem, the pain, the situation that you feel like you're in today. I thought about that. I last night I told Ashley, like, I got to read this out loud to you. Does this make sense? And driving in this morning, I started thinking about how the problem in your life can quickly take over what you should be doing. So when that problem and that situation and that just the want is so just not there, remove that problem and just find God. You remember what I said at the beginning, to get back into God's presence, you get back, all you have to do is say his name. Say a prayer wherever you're at, and it immediately changes your life. We as Christians we really, ride a roller coaster. Like you feel like everything's going good, and you're there. You're going to church and in small groups and grow groups, and just everything is coming together. And that problem comes up, and you're just like, what do I do? And I just think in Jonah's life, verse 7, he is saying, my life is fading away. He's realizing in this moment that he is dying, that he is just saying, I don't have anything else but to go back to what God's calling me to do, but to go back to say, you know what, I've messed up. In verse 9, he's calling him in thanksgiving. In this moment, his presence became more valuable than any circumstance, comforts, idols, and reputation. Jonah was very proudful. He was a prophet that loved being popular. Jonah understood he was God. Jonah understands who God was again, and his presence was greater than his wants. Jonah didn't want to lose his popular status as a positive prophet. Jonah didn't want to be the guy that gave the message, saving one of the most disliked people groups of all time. Jonah didn't want to go into an unpopular place and preach an unpopular message. God doesn't call us to be comfortable. All those things he was saying, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go out. I don't want to go to these people that nobody likes. Jonah wanted to stay comfortable. Jonah wanted to stand right here and say, I don't want to do this. So, think about in your life, think about like how you as a person just think about that. Like think about, there's a time in your life that God's called you to do something, and in that moment you have to decide, do I go or do I stay? And that's one of the hardest things to do. I could very easily stayed in that lifestyle, that party lifestyle. I could have very easily just stayed in that and just said, you know what? This is it. In fact, Ashley asked me, when are we going to go back to church? When are we going to go back and be around what we grew up around, be around people that, care versus really just not caring about us at all? And I told her never. I told her why. Why would I do that knowing that God took my father away from my family to have all this pain? Why would I go back to that? Think about that. Think about being 22 years old and just got married. Your brothers and sisters, all four of them, are so young and they don't understand what's going on. Why would I go back to somebody that just wants to destroy my life? It's simple. I was chasing things that wasn't necessarily what was best for me or my family. God didn't say, I will protect you. Come to me, I will make you feel better. Come to me, I will make you feel like this is your life. I will make you comfortable. He didn't say that. That is something that I still struggle with, is being comfortable. But at the end of the day, God, Jonah wasn't comfortable. He was in a fish dying because he wasn't in God's presence anymore. He was literally in there. The water was coming around him. Things were around his neck, and he is literally dying, and he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't get what, Lord, I said to you, I prayed to you in your holy temple. I prayed to you because I knew that I would walk. I prayed to you because I was supposed to pray to you. God didn't care. He walked away. Jonah walked away, turned his back on God. And that right there is what I did. I walked. I remember working in the news business. I saw a lot of different things. And towards my end of that career, when God called me into the ministry, I remember thinking, I'm the broken guy that didn't have it together a year ago. So no matter what your situation, no matter what you're going through, God changes that. No matter what you have done, no matter what you will do, no matter what is going on around you right now, it doesn't matter. God fixes it. God doesn't say, you walked, I'm done. He says, come back. He'll meet you. You don't have to go to him. He'll come to you where you're at right now. God's presence is the most important thing that is period, is the most important thing, period. No matter where you are, no matter what you have been doing, no matter what you're going through, He is bigger than that. He is bigger than your problem, the pain, the situation. Remember to focus on God's presence. Now, I'm not saying you should just, that's all you should be doing, but, you should be right with God. You should, to just pray, God, I don't have it together, or I don't understand this situation. No matter how many times you've messed up or you ran away from God, He's still there. For the old lady that is sitting in the doctor, having tests done and not understanding what's going on. In that situation, she's really trying to figure out what is it. But through the waiting and through the understanding what God has put her through, she sees that God is bigger than the test, that He's bigger than the unknown. And that test, that unknown, well, she got closer to God. During that situation, she understood that she had to pray, and she stood there. This next situation is real. This is a guy that I've known since I was 15 years old. when you graduate high school, you lose touch. And his situation got rocky. His problems got bigger than God. He was so wrapped up into the problem of his life that it was so just overbearing. He stole so much money from his mom and dad, they couldn't do Christmas one year. He goes to his mom and dad and said, look, I gotta get out. Something has to change. So he goes to rehab. He comes back. He was gone for about 30 days. He comes back. He calls me and says, hey, I need to meet up with you. Wait, what? I know what you've done. I know you've been arrested 3 times. You want to meet up with me. So we met up, quickly, talked. He's just like, God, I was away from God's presence. I prayed. I was on my knees, and I felt God's presence again. 4 years ago, he came in my life again, and today he's serving in a church. Today he's sharing the gospel. Today that he is clean and he's married. His life has changed because he got back into the presence of God. A 16-year-old student is going through, a mom and dad is getting divorced. Everything together, school, trying to be popular, all this stuff is going through his head. And he's just trying to figure it out. And, his mom and dad's getting divorced, and he's really just seeking, how this is huge. What do I do? Whoop, I about fell. That would have been bad. That's why you don't walk so close to the edge. That would have been really bad. So, I don't think there's recovering off that one. The point of that is to realize that that it's going back to the thumb and the sun. The problem is the thumb. He could very easily focus in on his mom and dad's divorce and how everything's changing. And there's all this stuff. Or you could focus on what God's called him to do and pray to get back into God's presence. When Pastor Matt asked me to preach, I said, sure. I've never done this. But when I was reading Jonah 2, it spoke to me. I realized that, God's plan is so big. And to line this up to what is huge. My life was Jonah. I was in the belly of the fish. I was in just broken. So Jonah chose to not obey God. His situation became terrible. He felt distant from God. The answer is getting back into God's presence is as easy as it's just saying his name. Think about that. We don't have to go to a holy temple to get back into his presence. We don't have to go find somewhere to pray. We can pray anywhere. So I want to leave you with this. The main point is getting back into God's presence. That's easy. It's easy. Just say his name, and it immediately changes your life. Bow with me. Let me pray for everybody. God, thank you for this day. Thank you just for being able to share your word, Lord, and just to be able to realize what Jonah did, Lord, to realize that he walked away from your presence and he quickly realized, wait, I've messed up. Lord, I pray over the church, Lord, and I pray that if somebody can relate to what Jonah did, or just to hear say, no matter what is going on, no matter the situation or what they have done or will do or doing right now, you can change that. You can change the situation. You can change the pain in somebody's life just like that. Lord, you changed my life. You changed this broken sinner that doesn't deserve any of this. Because of your grace, because you came to me again after I just said your name, everything changed in my life. Lord, I pray that someone else experiences just the change and just the want of understanding how powerful you are, how big and gracious you are, how merciful that you are, how loving that you are just to your kids, Lord. You adopted us into your family. Lord, you're great. We just thank you. We love you and just praise you for everything you've done and will do, Lord. And you're just such a wonderful Father, Lord, that we get to come and worship and praise you, Lord. We love you. Amen. You know, we each week we have a time that we can come up here and pray and just come up here and let your heart out. God didn't call me to come up here and preach. He called me to come up here and just let my heart out. And I hope you all see that God changes quickly. All you have to do is say his name. To get back into his presence is easy. That's the easy part. We love you. We love being able to come as a staff and just to come up here and just share the gospel and just be able to come and just be with you guys. If you feel led to come up here and pray about whatever, come up here. If you feel like you just need to talk, I'll talk. Whatever you feel led to do, do it.